Hi, I'm Takoa De Silva with Sprott Global Resource Investments, and I'm sitting down here today with Ross Beaty, Chairman and Founder of Pan American Silver and Altera Power Corp. Ross, good to see you.
Good morning.
I'm happy that you decided to join me here today, so thank you. And I want to ask you about your background and your experience throughout your career in the resource business. But for the person watching, if they're new to the resource conversation, who are you? What's your background for that person?
Well, I'm a Vancouver boy, born and raised in the west coast of Canada, and I always wanted to work outdoors. I had my first rock collection when I was young, and I became a geologist, and it sounded to me the perfect job, getting paid to climb mountains and fly around in helicopters. It was a great deal. But I discovered I was also a decent entrepreneur and a good salesman. I think that kind of goes hand in hand. And so I've had a career of really not working for anybody except myself. And I've just started company after company after company. And with a huge amount of luck, they've been successful in the minerals business. And I've recently tried my hand at the energy business, clean electricity. And it's been just a huge amount of fun and a lot of success. And they've all been public companies. So my background is very public, and there's been a lot of other shareholders that have been with me as I've gone on this amazing little journey of wealth creation in the resources business, and it's worked out well. And I've got 5 kids and 1 wife, and just have a lot of fun living life.
Yeah, Ross, how'd you get started in the business? Where'd you cut your teeth?
Yeah, so I went to the University of British Columbia, got a geology degree, then I went to the London Royal School of Mines in London for a master's degree. I on the side, I hardly ever mention this, I actually have a law degree as well and qualified as a lawyer, but I never ever wanted to practice as a lawyer. But it was good background. So I really finished all that in the 70s, going to school and working as a geologist to make money to put myself through school. In 1980, I started with my own company, Beaty Geological, a little contract geology company. Worked very hard all over the world, West Africa, New Zealand, lots of work in the United States and Canada. And in 1985, I took my first company public. Actually, Rick Rule was a seed investor in that company. That's where I got to know Rick. It was in 85. The company was called Equinox Resources. And Equinox was a lot of painful lessons. My first public company, I didn't have anybody telling me how to do things or working with me. So we ended up acquiring a bunch of good projects, a lot of exploration work, and we had many calamities in Africa and in California. I remember spending 3 years trying to permit a 50,000-ounce gold mine in California, which is just stupid. I mean, it was a lesson that I learned that small projects make small money and yet they have big hassle. So you always should focus on size. Anyway, we had a lot of projects in Nevada and California and Utah, all over the West, and eventually found a gold mine. We had a novel exploration technique called walking, and we walked over the mountains in Nevada, and we discovered a gold mine. We staked some ground and optioned it to one company. They drilled it and dropped it, gave it back to us. Then we optioned it to another company, and they drilled just a little deeper than the first company drilled. And bingo, there was a really nice high-grade gold deposit called Rosebud. Well, Rosebud was owned in a joint venture, 50-50 joint venture, with LAC. LAC said it was a little bit too small for them. So in the bear market of 1992, we offered to buy it from LAC. We couldn't raise money, but I was able to sell a royalty. And with the money from the royalty, for a couple $2 million, we bought out LAC, had 100% of the project. The following year, we had an offer to sell the whole company to Hecla for $107 million, basically on that one deposit. So it was just a matter of, the deal timing was lucky, and the market turned right after we did the deal, and Hecla wanted an asset like that to replace one that was going out of production. So it was just an absolutely great deal. It was a win-win, and we sold the company in the spring of 1994. At that moment, I didn't want to retire, so I took all of our team, and because I thought that the U.S. market, particularly the U.S. market, needed a real silver play, I thought this was a cool thing. This would be a cool thing to do with my second public company, and so I started Pan American Silver from scratch. We bought a shell company that had no assets, no money, and I think it was a 7-cent share price, and we had a mission, with no assets, to build the world's biggest silver company.
What year was that, Ross?
1994. So it was kind of ambitious, but I'd made some people money. They loved the idea of silver. They backed me. They raised some money. Again, Rick came in right at the start. He's always been there when I started a new company as a seed shareholder, and Pan American went from that idea to try to build the world's biggest silver company. 20 years later, we are now the company is the world's second largest primary silver mining company. It's a really big company. It's in great shape, fabulous balance sheet. We're not delighted at the low silver prices today, but it's been a really successful company. We have about 8,000 employees now, multi-billion-dollar market value, balance sheet that's the rival of most companies in the industry, about $350 million in cash, another couple $100 million in working capital beyond that. So it's in great shape, and wonderful management team. So it's been a lot of fun building that over the years. Again, we made lots of mistakes and had all kinds of calamities. We had spent 3 years working on a project in Russia, and it was a disaster. And we almost went bankrupt in 2001 with the bear market. We had 3 months of cash left, and we were losing money at our one silver mine in Peru, and then all of a sudden the market turned, and we did a little financing with Bill Gates. And then, we haven't looked back. The stock went from $3 to $45 in just a matter of years. So, this is sometimes what can happen after a bear market. The worst time of a bear market can turn into just an absolutely wonderful run. So, over the other, years, I guess, I've also started other companies. There was Da Capo Resources, a Bolivian gold exploration play that was sold in the mid-90s. There was a platinum project in Brazil called El Toro Resources, which we sold in the late 90s. And then in 2002, I had an idea to build a copper play. And that turned into Lumina Copper, which turned into 6 separate companies. They were the last of the 6 companies was sold last August, and that was a lot of fun. We invested $170 million in a bunch of copper projects, and eventually did the exit for a total of $1.87 billion. So it was a really happy story for shareholders. And then, as you know, I started my little clean energy company in 2008, 2009, and that company is a thriving company today. Altera Power, it's called.
Lumina Copper, what was the market like when you formed that company? And was, I guess, the usual gang there in terms of financiers backing that?
Well, we didn't really need very much money. And I mean, with Pan American, we were building a mining company. It's a very different thing when you need the capital to build mines. You need millions, hundreds of millions. But if you're trying to build a speculation, like what we were trying to do with Lumina Copper was identify big, relatively well-proven copper deposits that were not economic at low copper prices. So they were very cheap. And in 2002 and 2003, when we acquired our 10 deposits, it was really a buyer's market. So we were able to buy these very, very cheaply because the companies that had them didn't think they were worth anything. The market had been in a bear market for 5 or 6 years at that point. Copper had been in a bear market for about 20 years. And so, these were things that had been proven up in the 90s or 80s or 70s or even 60s in some cases. And they were just on the company's books for nothing, and so it was very easy to make a cheap deal. So we acquired a whole bunch of these deposits in mining-friendly countries, and none of them had really what I would call a fatal flaw. So they all had potential to be mines if the copper price went up. That was the one thing that we needed. But because I looked at a chart of 50 years of copper prices, it was just, to me, it was blindingly obvious that in 2002, copper was at an all-time low. It was 70, 80 cents a pound. And even though a lot of people thought that the copper price was going to stay that price for a long time, I didn't, because I just looked back at the last 50 years, and copper prices go like a sine wave with increasing amplitude. And the low in 2001, 2002 was lower than the lows of the previous 50 years. So it was an all-time low. It didn't take a rocket scientist to think that the copper price was going to go up. I had no idea when it would go up or how high it would go. Ultimately, it went to $4 or $4.50. And, the super cycle in China, I'd also been in China. I knew what was happening there. that the Chinese demand drove all of these metal prices beyond what anybody predicted, in the late 90s or early 2000s. So Lumina was one company, just a speculation on copper, all these 10 assets in the one company, and then all of a sudden in 2003, the copper price took off. It went from 70, 80, $1, $1.20, $1.40, and it went all the way to $4.50 over the next 10 years. So it was a very fun time to be creating wealth by drilling holes, adding to the value of these deposits one by one, and then quantifying how good they were, doing economic studies, and then running a little process and trying to find a buyer. And we ultimately sold all companies in the group, and for about almost 1.9 billion. And they were all cash deals or cash equivalents. They were all big companies. One was sold to a huge Japanese company. Another one was sold to a couple of huge Chinese companies. Another one was sold to Teck, big Canadian mining company. And the last one, last fall, was sold to First Quantum, which is a really great Australian Canadian mining company, one of the biggest copper producers in the world. And then we kept royalties in all of these properties we had, so we put those all together in a company called Lumina Royalty, and we sold that to Franco Nevada. So it was luck and timing. It was good execution. We have a wonderful team. The same team worked on the whole Lumina story all the way through from the beginning. We still have the team active today, and good financial engineering, and again, lots and lots of luck on specific projects. So just a lot of fun too, along the way.
Yeah. What's the strategy, the big picture strategy for Altera Power?
Right. So by 2000 and I'm going to say 8, I had I'd done 12 or 13 public companies, and they were all in the resources business. I had sort of retired from Pan American as CEO. I'd got Jeff Burns in to run the company. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And he's been running it for the last 6 years, or been running it now for almost 10 years. But he stepped up to CEO, and I moved from chairman CEO to non-executive chairman. So it was kind of like a real move back. I'm still non-executive chairman today, but I'm not actively engaged in Pan American. But I didn't want to retire, and I wanted to do something different. So actually with Rick's active encouragement, he kind of talked about, I wanted to do something environmentally friendly, you could say, something that would be good for the world, that would satisfy my desire to try to reduce our carbon emissions and produce electricity using clean technology, meaning geothermal, wind, hydro, and solar power. So it was something different for me. It was I started the company focused on geothermal power. Both Rick and I thought it was really going to be a great long-term solution for the world, and it turned out not to be. It turned out to be a very risky, very difficult business, and we both had a lot of investment, you could say disasters, in looking at different geothermal plays. I had bought some assets that were producing, though, in the company, which we have to this day. So we had it wasn't just an exploration play. It was a producing company right from the beginning. And so we took it public in 2009. In 2011, I had grown somewhat, I had realized just how tough the geothermal business was. But I still wanted to build a clean energy company bigger and bigger. So I acquired a company in British Columbia called Plutonic Power, joined the two companies together, and into the company that is today Altera Power. And since then, we have expanded our production. In fact, we're increasing it 40% this year and early in part of next year with two big projects, one in Texas and one in British Columbia, to the point that we'll have operating assets of about 800 and some megawatts, just a decent amount of power, 175 geothermal, about 144 wind, 344 wind, and the balance hydro. We had a solar business, a solar operation in Ontario, which we sold. We had another geothermal plant in Nevada, which we just sold. So we're buying and we're selling and we're building and we're exploring, and it's just, we're trying to get as big as we can, because in the electricity business, where you're selling power on long-term contracts, it's all about finance. And that means your cost of capital is everything. If you have a low cost of capital, you can be competitive. You can acquire things that are in auctions, for example. And the bigger you are, the lower your cost of capital. So I'm trying to build Altera Power into a really big producer with all of all of our guys operate the projects, build and operate these projects we have. And even though it's a tough business too, we've been successful now. We've built a business that will sustain itself for literally hundreds of years, because these assets go forever, right? They're based on, wind and sunshine and falling water and geothermal heat. So this is the part of the business that's so diametrically opposite from mining, where every day you eat your future and ultimately your mine runs out. With clean energy, it goes forever, which is a really cool concept.
There are a few more questions I want to ask you. I think on the clean energy conservation environmental aspect, what's been your conclusion as to the best approach to conserve Earth's resources? Is it just to consume less as a person?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the big picture solutions to get to a truly sustainable lifestyle for humans is, moderate our population growth, reduce our per capita consumption, and really change our whole focus of life from growth, needing growth, to living in a way that is just simply more sustainable. Things that can be done over hundreds of years instead of just a few tens of years, where we're consuming so much oil and so much gas and so much coal and so much non-renewable resources that we're really taking our children's future away from them in some respects. So we can all do something to that end. The thing that I'm trying to do is to try to build in my small way. I mean, Alterra is still a small company. It's just a pipsqueak on the total world electricity stage, but it's something that I can do and hopefully make money at as well. If I can make money building a clean energy business that's sustainable for the long term, that's a double win. So this is one thing which I can do, and I'm doing it, but there's a lot of other things that can be done to the big picture of trying to get to a truly more sustainable world, which is going to benefit everybody.
I guess back to growth. A few years ago, I remember you talking about the concept of a good way to get a good picture of the world is to fly from one major city to the next on different continents, from North America to the Middle East to Asia.
Yes, for sure.
What's your travel schedule been like over the last year? How do you view the events of 2014 and now going into 2015 on a global macro picture? Okay,
so I guess, well, first of all, just on the travel bit, I really encourage people to travel. I often go to the States and I'll be in a room of investors and I'll say, how many people have been to China or India, and 2 or 3 hands go up, or how many people can name the 5 largest cities in China? They're all over 10 million people, by the way. They're all bigger than the biggest U.S. city, and almost nobody can do it. So if you want to understand investing, if you really do, especially resource investing, travel is important, research is important, talking to smart people is important, good advisors. It's not terribly difficult business, I think, if you can form your own opinions from looking at these things that are going on in the world, the way I did, say, by going to China in the early part of the last decade. But I have to say that, and having said that, today, I don't think ever in my career have I seen more weird things going on that can have unintended consequences that I really don't know how to figure out. So let's just talk about a few. There's these exchange wars where currencies are fluctuating at warp speed. Japan's currency devalues a year 50%. The euro is down against the dollar. The dollar is up 20% against the Canadian dollar in less than a year. These are huge changes in currencies, and those are causing winners. There's winners and losers. So in Japan, the Japan yen is weaker than the renminbi now. Well, there's a push. There should be now pushes by the Korean won and the Taiwanese currency and the Vietnamese currency to weaken, to be trade on some kind of trade parity with Japan. So if you have those changes, all of a sudden you affect the carry trade, where people are borrowing in dollars at low interest rates and investing in Japan or China. And that gets all thrown askew. Well, there's trillions of dollars in that market. I don't know where that's going to end. There's going to be winners and losers, and be careful of the losers. Energy wars. Look at what happened to the oil price, the world's biggest traded commodity, in 2 months, down by 50%. Winners and losers. I don't know how that's going to shake out. Chaos. I mean, there's real chaos in those markets right now. And I could just keep going. You know, there's the geopolitical wars that we all know about. Some are small today, but they could blow up. You've got the religious wars. There's the climate wars. There's all kinds of people who are trying to stop global carbon emissions. So the coal industry is suffering, you know, giant changes. You know, thermal coal that is used to make electricity is pretty much being done out of business. Again, there's winners and there's losers in that. A lot of investors are now starting to de-invest from oil companies. That's going to, and the high-cost oil producers are stressed anyway. The deep ocean producers that aren't making any money, the frack producers that aren't making a lot of money, the tar sands companies that aren't making a lot of money today, this is just causing all kinds of stress. Growth wars. There's people who are like me who think growth is almost certainly going to moderate. It's not going to be 3.5% a year globally for the next 10 years like it has been for the last 30 years because we've hit limits to growth. We've hit all sorts of limits. Ecological limits, demographic limits, land availability limits, groundwater, soil, all kinds of things that are stressing our ability to grow like we've grown in the last 30 or 40 years. Debt limits. We just simply can't borrow anymore to juice growth like was the traditional model for the last 30 or 40 years. Put all that together, and it's all happening now, and it's happening quickly. You know, there's a lot of weird things that I can't really figure out how it's going to end. But quite frankly, my salvage, or my salvation I should say, or my refuge, is in precious metals. It's in gold and silver. So I am very bullish on gold right now. I'm particularly bullish watching what's happening to the gold price relative to the US dollar. I'm bullish on silver because silver will follow gold. Silver has always traded with gold. Silver's industrial side is very strong as well, so I'm quite encouraged at the fundamentals on the silver side. I'm also very much of the view that investors today to have a refuge from all these storms that are blowing up all over the place should have, you know, some significant amount of gold in their portfolios. So I'm putting a lot in right now as an investor. I don't buy the physical metal, I buy companies, because even if I'm wrong, even if gold doesn't go up, a well-run company will create wealth, and that'll be a successful outcome for me as an investor. So with my investment money, I'm buying various gold companies, some public, some not so public, and that's how I see the world right now. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad you bring that up about investing in people and companies that will do well wherever the price of gold and silver goes, I guess to an extent. And because I'm often presented with the question, should I put everything I have into gold and silver and go live in a cabin somewhere? Right. And my thinking is, why not look towards people who can build things, who can create efficient organizations and take an asset, make it profitable, and deliver returns to investors? Why not do that while still having exposure to the gold and silver price? So I'm glad you mentioned that.
You know, it's really a lot of people. This is the end of 4 years of really weak markets, right? In the metal space, in the resources space. So a lot of investors are bruised and bloodied. We're starting the fifth year. If the tide is going out, if there is a huge macro wave away from metals, metal prices declining, you know, you're probably better off to own the metal than the companies, because the companies tend to underperform the metals in a bear market. Bear markets feed on themselves. So if an investor is losing money, he's not going to want to buy another speculative gold company or copper company. So, you know, it's true that even in bad markets, you will have some great investment successes where a company's had good exploration results or has done a really smart acquisition. You will have those, but typically the whole sector is going to be losing out. And the best strategy then is to do what nobody does, which is sell at the top. That's, you know, buy at the bottom, sell at the top. That's what you're supposed to do. But of course nobody ever does that. But it's times like this where we've had 4 years of bear markets, and I don't know whether the bear is going to turn into a bull market in a year or 2 days or 2 years. I really don't know when the bottom is. But I know this is not the top. We've had 4 years of terrible markets. I would say today is just a really good time to be building a portfolio of well-run junior companies. My bias is in gold, because I think that gold is going to outperform the other metals. Personally, gold and silver will outperform the other metals. But buy a portfolio of companies and really focus on a couple of things. One is the asset has to be good. You know, you can have a genius with a crappy asset and he's not going to make money. And you can have an idiot with a phenomenal world-class asset and he's actually going to make money. Stock's going to go up. So so people are the second thing. People are really, really important, but my first priority is looking at the asset, looking at the quality of the project that the company has. Having that behind me, I then look to the people, because weirdly, there are certain groups of people in every market who just seem to know how to make money for people. You know, Lucas Lundin would be one of my best examples. He just has a nose for building a team and building a story that he just has an incredible gift for that. The Hunter Dickinson Group did that for many, many years. I've been very successful in doing that. There's a handful of people who just seem to be lucky, I'd say. And I'm definitely, I would blame a lot of my success on just sheer luck. But I have been lucky. And you know, it's true, the more you work, the luckier you get. But the people is important. People, the team that run these companies is really important. And there's some really good teams right now. Guys like I might have been, say, 20 years ago. And there's lots of them out there. I'm not an investment advisor, so I'm not, you know, I'm not particularly interested in talking about them. But guys like Sprott, you guys know who they are and where they are. And I'm sure you're backing them and I'm sure you're following them. So today is a good time to be getting into this. 4 years ago, I would have said no.
If I could ask, with our viewer understanding that it's not an investment recommendation or anything like that, but outside of Lucas Lundin, are there any other management teams that come to mind that you think are really doing some interesting things, have a good attitude and a good approach?
Sure, there's a number. Well, I'd say Mark O'Day's group is one of those. There's a group that works with the Sandstorm Resources, royalty companies. You know, there are a handful of good operators out there today, and they are making money for people. Some are having various problems in individual projects or countries, but there's lots of good stories. I was walking around the Prospector Developers Convention here in Toronto, and you know, I was really impressed at some of the stories I heard. They're very cheap stocks, but it's been a fun trip here to look at these opportunities that exist today.
And just as a final theme I want to ask you about, but before we wind down, when you look at today's market, undeveloped deposits, things that are out there in the market trading, not necessarily shares trading, but projects that may trade back and forth between companies, do you see similar conditions now that you saw in the early 2000s when you were putting together Lumina Copper?
Yes, you do. Yeah, every cycle has similar things and different things. And every metal is different. Every cycle there's factors that, I mean, today there's more resource nationalism. Well, that'll improve in four or five more years, because countries have overshot their demands for tax and all of these things are costing companies more money, so they're not investing like they used to. Things take a lot longer today to get done. That will keep prices higher for longer. Like I said, the metals are all different today. You've got some winners and you've got some losers, and then that's normal. So it's easy to paint a broad brush of things, but actually when you get down to detailed investments, you really have to be careful. I wouldn't buy anything with say iron ore or thermal coal in its name. I'd be askance at looking at you know, nickel, say, or maybe lead. And other things I really like. I like copper, I like gold, I like silver. Uranium's kind of interesting to me right now. And so you have to look at each individual metal and the prospects for it. But there are a lot of similarities today to what typically happens in the bottom of a bear market. A lot of sadness, a lot of difficulty raising money, a lot of very stressed junior companies, and very unhappy investors. And that's the nature of the beast. When things turn, you know, the tide will come in and everybody will be happy again.
Is there a single one thing that you could quickly recommend to the viewer if they're, again, new to the resource sector?
A single thing, you know, follow smart people. You guys are the smartest in the business, so I would certainly give a plug for Sprott. You have I mean, Rick Rule's been a friend of mine now for, oh boy, it's hard to believe, but 30 years. And I've just watched how successful he's been, and how how wise he is. And following wise people is never a bad thing. A lot of companies are run by wise people. Tracking those people down, men and women, and backing them is usually a recipe to success. It's worked for me. Should work for most people today.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Ross Beaty, Chairman and Founder of Pan American Silver and Altera Power Corp. Thanks for sharing your comments with us.
My pleasure.